Something happened when you left. Not something dramatic, not something announced, something quieter and more permanent than that. The moment you stopped showing up, whether in a relationship, a group, a workplace, or a family dynamic, the thing your presence had been quietly holding together began to show the cracks you were filling. And the people who never fully acknowledged what you contributed began, often for the first time, to feel its weight by feeling its absence. They regret it now, or something in them does. That's real, but this isn't about them. It's about what your withdrawal revealed, not just to them, but to you. About the kind of person it takes to carry that much for that long without demanding recognition. And about what you're meant to do with the clarity that comes after. There's a pattern that shows up in people who live through a specific kind of relational experience. Not dramatic, acute trauma, but the slow accumulation of giving more than you receive inside systems that never name the imbalance. Psychology describes one outcome as post-traumatic growth, but what matters here is the more specific quality you developed inside that landscape: clarity under pressure. Over time, you learn to understand dynamics more accurately than the people who weren't carrying their weight. You developed an emotional intelligence calibrated to contribution, imbalance, and relational load. You can walk into a room and read its invisible architecture: who is holding what, who is taking what, where the tension lives, and why, because you spent years having to understand it to survive it. That perception was built at real cost, often without your permission. And now it belongs to you, permanently. But there's a danger most people miss at this stage. The same intelligence that helped you carry for so long can also keep you carrying past the point where carrying serves your growth. When you understand a system perfectly, including its dysfunction, understanding can feel like being needed, and being needed can become a trap. Your absence wasn't only a statement to others, it was a statement to yourself. The perception you developed under pressure is now strong enough to direct your own life, not just sustain someone else's. Let's name the forces you were operating inside, not to assign blame, but to reclaim precision. Environments that produce chronic, unacknowledged carrying tend to organize themselves around a few people with a high tolerance for relational discomfort. People who absorb tension, smooth conflict, hold emotional weight, and keep functioning. Over time, the system assumes that those people will continue indefinitely. Not always out of malice, but because systems chase equilibrium through the path of least resistance. And your nervous system paid for it. Chronic relational load doesn't always look dramatic. It often looks like low-grade stress running constantly in the background. Highly functional on the outside, quietly exhausted on the inside. Expert at reading what others need, increasingly disconnected from what you need. Somewhere early, the pattern taught you something that started to feel like fact. Your value is tied to your usefulness. Your presence has to justify itself through function. But it was never a fact. Your withdrawal was the moment your nervous system and the deeper part of your intelligence finally acted on that truth. Now let's talk about what your absence does structurally. When the stabilizing presence in a system withdraws, the system is forced into a reorganization event. The equilibrium that was maintained by one person is disrupted, and the relationship or group must find a new balance without that input. That's what reveals the truth. The gap you leave isn't only emotional, it's functional. It shows up in what no longer gets handled, what no longer gets smoothed over, what no longer gets absorbed. And that's why regret often comes later. First comes resistance, reframing, even resentment, because the system wants the old equilibrium back. Regret arrives when the absence lasts long enough that what was lost becomes undeniable. Here's what you need to hear clearly. Their regret is real, but it isn't your responsibility. It's information. It confirms what you already knew, that your contribution was real and the weight you carried was actual weight. What you do with that confirmation matters. There are two common responses. The first is to return, treating their regret as proof that you should re-enter the dynamic and resume the role, now with the added pain of knowing it was unacknowledged. This response usually recreates the imbalance because the structure hasn't changed, only the emotional temperature has. The second response is rarer. Receive the confirmation as confirmation, without letting it pull you back. Let the evidence validate your perception without that validation changing your direction. That is emotional transmutation at its most mature, taking the raw material of their regret and converting it into clarity about your own path, instead of recycling pain or feeding ego. And here's what chosen withdrawal builds in you. It doesn't only change what others experience, it changes you. Removing yourself from a system that required your overfunction initiates reorganization in your own mind and body. Your nervous system begins to down-regulate. The constant scanning, who needs stabilizing, what tension needs managing, starts to lose its purpose because the conditions that required it are no longer present. At first, that can feel like emptiness. When your identity has been fused to function, leaving the role can feel like losing yourself. But that disorientation isn't proof you made a mistake. It's proof the old pattern had real weight in you, and your system is releasing it. What grows in the space you created is a relationship with your own preferences that isn't filtered through the needs of the system, an awareness of your own energy that isn't always tracking someone else's. Attention that used to be spent holding everything together becomes available for your life, your direction, your work, your peace, your future. Quietly, through ordinary days lived differently, your brain begins building the pathways of what comes next. So what do you do with their regret? Think of it with precision. Regret in others is recalibration, their inner model of your value updating in light of new information. That process belongs to them. Your job is to understand what it confirms without being governed by it. Regret is confirmation, not invitation. It confirms the imbalance was real. It confirms your withdrawal was proportionate. It does not confirm you are obligated to return. If there is ever to be a return, it should only happen under a new structure, explicitly negotiated conditions, distributed relational load, changed behavior, not just warmer emotions. Your boundary is not punishment, it's communication. And what it communicates is simple. You understand your value clearly enough now to require it be met. Let me leave you with this. The capacities you developed, high tolerance for discomfort, the ability to read environments, stability inside instability, are real, measurable, and yours. The challenge now is to redirect them, not toward systems that undervalue you, but toward building a life that reflects the full weight of what you can contribute when that contribution is met with corresponding investment. The old pattern will resist. It will show up as guilt when you rest, anxiety when you prioritize yourself, the pull to overfunction whenever something looks unstable. Recognize it, name it, then choose again and again to respond differently than the pattern demands. Your absence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a different chapter, one written from a different understanding of what you owe yourself and what you will accept from others. Their regret is real. Let it be theirs. And let what is yours be yours completely. You left, and in leaving, you created the only kind of return that is ever worth anything. The kind where the terms are clear, the requirements are met, and the imbalance can't reform because you know with earned precision exactly what you are worth. That clarity isn't arrogance. It's the product of the work, and it belongs to you completely.